How can I face the fact of nothing, which is by definition not a fact? You see? All this is twaddle, from whichever way you look at it. So if you really go the whole way and see how you feel at the prospect of vanishing forever, of all your efforts and all your achievements and all your attainments turning into dust and nothingness, what is the feeling? What happens to you? It's a curious thing that in the world's poetry, this is a very common theme. The earthly hope men set their hearts upon turns ashes, or it prospers, and anon, like snow upon the desert's dusty face, lighting a little hour or two, is gone. All kinds of poetry emphasizes the theme of transience. And there's a kind of nostalgic beauty to it. A banquet hall deserted. After the revelry, all the guests had left and gone their ways. The table with overturned glasses, crumpled napkins, breadcrumbs, dirty knives and forks lies empty. And the laughter echoes only in one's mind.
There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. All the rest, whether or not the world has 3 dimensions, whether the mind has 9 or 12 categories, comes afterwards. These are games. One must first answer. Dying voluntarily implies that you have recognized, even instinctively, the ridiculous character of that habit, the absence of any profound reason for living, the insane character of that daily agitation, and the uselessness of suffering. What then is the incalculable feeling that deprives the mind of the sleep necessary to life? A world that can be explained even with bad reasons is a familiar world. But one, on the other hand, in a universe suddenly divested of illusions and lights, man feels an alien, a stranger. His exile is without remedy, since he is deprived of the memory of a lost home or the hope of the promised land. This divorce between a man and his life, an actor and his setting, is probably the feeling of absurdity. All healthy men, having thought of their own suicide, it can be seen without further explanation that there is a direct connection between this feeling and a longing for death. The subject of this essay is precisely this relationship between the absurd and the suicide. The exact degree to which suicide is a solution to the absurd. It is a matter of living in that state of the absurd. I know on what it is founded, this mind and this world straining against each other without being able to embrace each other. I don't know whether this world has a meaning that transcends it, but I do know that I do not know that meaning, and that it is impossible for me just now to know it. And these certainties, my appetite for the absolute and for unity, and the impossibility of reducing this world to a rational and reasonable principle, I also know that I cannot reconcile with. What other truth can I admit without lying, without bringing in a hope I lack, which means nothing within the limits of my condition? Seeking what is true is not seeking what is desirable. Sisyphus is an absurd hero. He is as much through his passions as through his torture. His scorn of the gods, his hatred of death, and his passion for life warn him that unspeakable penalty in which the whole being is exerted toward accomplishing nothing. This is the price that must be paid for the passions of this earth. As for the myth, one sees merely the whole effort of a body straining to raise the huge stone, to roll it and push it up a slope 100 times over. One sees the face screwed up, the cheek tight against the stone, the shoulder bracing the clay-covered mass, the foot wedging it, the fresh start with arms outstretched, the wholly human security of two earth-clotted hands. At the very end of his long effort, measured by skyless space and time without depth, the purpose is achieved. Then Sisyphus watches the stone rush down in a few moments towards that lower world, whence he will have to push it up again toward the summit. He goes back to the plain. I see that man going back down with a heavy yet measured step toward the torment of which he will never know the end. That hour like a breathing space which returns as surely as his suffering. That is the hour of consciousness. At each of those moments when he leaves the heights and gradually sinks towards the layers of the god, he is superior to his fate. He is stronger than his rock. The workman of today works every day in his life at the same tasks, and his fate is no less absurd. But it is tragic only at the rare moments when it becomes conscious. Sisyphus, proletarian of the gods, powerless and rebellious, knows the whole extent of his wretched condition. It is what he thinks of during his descent. The lucidity that was to constitute his torture at the same time crowns his victory. There is no fate that cannot be surmounted by scorn. If the descent is thus sometimes performed in sorrow, it can also take place in joy. This word is not too much. Again, I fancy Sisyphus returning towards his rock, and the sorrow was in the beginning. When the images of earth cling too tightly to memory, when the call of happiness becomes too insistent, it happens that melancholy rises in a man's heart. This is the rock's victory. This is the rock itself. The boundless grief is too heavy to bear. These are our nights of Gethsemane.
There's a man in a rock in a real steep hill. Sun so hot even the shadows can kill. Keep on pushing, try to get to the top, but the forces of nature make his knees in a world full of pain. Time after time he gets back up again. Keep on pushing. Picture him happy. Now the sun is the truth and there ain't no place to hide. The rocket's time passing and time will abide. The hill is just the shape of all things to come, and man, he's just suffering in the heat and the sun, trying to find some meaning in a world that don't care. But the rock won't talk and the hill don't share. You gotta keep on pushing. Yeah, picture him happy. Picture him happy. Now, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It ain't where you go, it's the way you go through it. Now desperate times call for desperate actions. Desperate minds, yeah, that's a desperate attractions. Well, the sun is so hot you can't even breathe the air. It's an eye for an eye, everything is fair. Try to find reason in a world where there's none but the rock and the hill and this goddamn sun. But when he gets to the top, there's a terrible thrill. He sees another man, another rock going up another hill. Keep on pushing. Yeah, picture him happy. Picture him happy.
But crushing truths perish from being acknowledged. One does not discover the absurd without being tempted to write a manual of happiness. There is but one world, however. Happiness and the absurd are two sons of the same earth. They are inseparable. It would be a mistake to say that happiness necessarily springs from the absurd discovery. It happens as well that the feeling of the absurd springs from happiness. I conclude that all is well, says Oedipus, and that remark is sacred. It echoes in the wild and limited universe of man. It teaches that all is not, has not been, exhausted. It drives out of this world a god who had come into it with dissatisfaction and a preference for futile sufferings. It makes a fate a human matter, which must be settled among men. All Sisyphus' silent joy is contained therein. His fate belongs to him. His rock is his thing. Likewise, the absurd man, when he contemplates his torment, silences all the idols. In the universe, suddenly restored to its silence, the myriad wandering little voices of the earth rise up. Unconscious, secret calls, invitations from all the faces. They are the necessary reverse and price of victory. There is no sun without shadow, and it is essential to know the night. The absurd man says yes, and his effort will henceforth be unceasing. If there is a personal fate, there is no higher destiny, or at least there is but one which he concludes is inevitable and despicable. For the rest, he knows himself to be the master of his days. At that subtle moment, when man glances backward over his life, Sisyphus returning toward his rock, in that slight pivoting he contemplates that series of unrelated actions which becomes his fate, created by him, combined under his memory's eye, and soon sealed by his death. Thus, convinced of the wholly human origin of all that is human, blind man eager to see, who knows that the night has no end. He is still on the go. The rock is still rolling. I leave Sisyphus at the top of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. This universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy.
I feel more comfortable now. I feel more comfortable now. I feel more comfortable now.
This is how I wanna love you, with an open heart and an open hand. This is how I wanna touch you, with an open heart and an open hand. Nothing else will come between us but an open heart and an open hand. I don't care if you feel ugly, I've got an open heart, I wanna be your man.
I can feel the rhythm of your heart.
I'll be right back when you step. I'll be right back when you step. I'll be right back. I'll be right back when you step. I'll be right back.